What's up, everybody? I hope everybody's having a fantastic Monday. It's time for the Overreaction Monday show. I'm Jeff Ketchum. That is Anwar Richardson and Alex Dunlap joining me here on Orange Bloods Live. Do us a solid. Hit that thumbs up button. Subscribe to the page. Get notifications. Just do it all at once as you enter if you haven't already done so. And as Alan says in the Specs chat, smash the like button. Smash it. Just beat the ever-living shit out of that like button. But to only punch it once or at least an odd number of times. If you hit it too many times and it's even, you've defeated the purpose for us. As I mentioned, welcome into the Specs chat. And I do want everybody to know that this video is brought to you by the amazing people over at therogueshop.com. The 420 sale is over. It's complete. It doesn't mean that you still don't go over to therogueshop.com and do some shopping, because why wouldn't you? It is, a place that I go to for cartridges. I have family members that go to the salve and the topicals for pain. We've talked about that so much. They've got the CBD oils. We've suddenly got our pet, our dog one of our dogs loves the CBD oil for pets. The ones created specifically for pets. I would just say go over to the website, rogueshop.com. Sleep, pain, just feeling good. There's a little bit of everything for everybody. Stress and anxiety. Get your shopping going today. They've actually got a quiz that you can take that will help lead you in the direction of the right products for you, should you not know. Fellas, the spring game was 2 days ago. It's Monday. Spring game was Saturday. Spring football now officially done. All we have are all of the thoughts that we had over the month of April and early March to kind of marinate on. Anwar, I'll go to you first. The Monday after the spring game, do you have a prevailing thought? Is there did you rewatch the spring game? Anything that you're just itching to get out on a Monday?
I don't know if I have anything more catch than I wrote on my column on Sunday. I think the only other thing that I didn't really harp on a lot on Sunday because I took a big picture approach. But for me, one of my biggest takeaway, honestly, is it's going to be really hard to keep Ryan Wingo off the field in the fall. And that everything I've heard as far as the reporting of him throughout the spring, the things that we reported, it basically came to fruition on that Saturday. And you can say it's one practice, and I get it, but it is one practice in the stadium. And everything that I've been hearing about who he is, some of the I've held out the comparisons, catch, because I didn't, that if I put in the comparison, that becomes a thing that everyone just focuses on, and God forbid he doesn't live up to that. But I can say it now. I feel more comfortable saying it now. For weeks throughout camp, everyone was telling me he's Julio Jones 2.0. And that's the comparison I kept getting as far as a big body receiver. And so just what he was able to do on that Saturday was just probably one of the more impressive spring performances I can remember from a receiver in a while, especially a freshman like that. So it's not really an overreaction, but it's probably more of a statement of fact. I think Isaiah Bond has got to be in the wide receiver one conversation throughout the offseason, and I think it's going to be hard to keep him off the field.
I would say that the Julio Jones comparison qualifies for at least a baby overreaction Monday hot take. A baby one, that's a big one.
Yeah. By the way, from a height and weight standpoint, because I looked it up, let me tell you, as hesitant as I was to use that, Julio Jones is 6'3". Wingo, I think, is 6'2", if I'm correct. And they're not that far off. Yes, Wingo's 6'2". Julio Jones is, let me see. I'm trying to get the height and weight. Overall, it wasn't that. Julio Jones is at 220, and Wingo was at 208. So it wasn't a crazy physical comparison as far as physicality. But yes, obviously, saying that guy will be Julio Jones is crazy, which is why I've held off on it. But now I feel like I have a little cover after that performance that I can say it now, and then just run away.
Well, I called him a baby AJ Brown during his recruitment, and people will hit me with, did he look like AJ Brown on Saturday? Like people remember these player comps, so maybe it's best that you said that under like a Monday, an overreaction Monday early in the show, slip it in there. Yeah. Alex, what about you? Any prevailing notion from starting to watch the video, breaking down the defense? Obviously, you were on the post-game show on Saturday, so we've all said some things, but we also need to pretend, maybe not pretend, but like be aware of the fact that a lot of people that will watch this won't have seen Saturday's show. So what are your prevailing thoughts from Saturday?
I mean, yeah, there's a lot of thoughts, man. I probably have a lot of ground to cover today. Hey, Anwar, whenever you're talking just now, you mentioned at the end, it might have just been, did you say, you were talking that whole time about Wingo, right? Or did you say Isaiah Bond's going to be the wide receiver one, or did you?
He was talking about Wingo.
Okay, so he might have just said Bond on at the very end. Okay, yeah, I was
if
like,
I said Bond, that was total.
Yeah, I was just like, man, I thought we were talking Wingo here. Okay, but yeah,
I don't feel like I said Bond, but it's all good.
Okay, well, it's all right. You can go back and listen if you'd like. The thing about
why are we debating, like, why are we debating that? Like, why does that even matter?
Oh, because I thought I might have confused what you said. I thought I might have confused what you said. That's all. I just want to make sure, like, because I was going to say about Wingo too.
2.5.
What?
I talked for 3 minutes. You're gonna listen to the first 2.5 when I said Ryan Wingo.
Yeah, right.
No, as opposed to
make sure I didn't miss something. Come on, man. But because what I was gonna say is saying the same thing about Wingo. I mean, it's like you mentioned there was this thing about the wide receiver one, right? And I thought to myself, with Wingo, as I watched it back, I'm like, man, I'm not. I love Jonte Cook, and I think that Jonte Cook's really, really good. But there is something about Wingo, man. Size, speed, hands. Just he's a really good player. So whenever you said, could he be wide receiver one, I thought to myself, man, that's something that I kind of thought about too. I don't know if that's an overreaction Monday kind of thing, but it's I mean, he's playing with the twos right now, so it seems a little bit. It seems a little bit, cockamamie and weird and out there, but I think he has the talent to be like the top wide receiver on the whole team. Is that wild? I mean, do you guys think that is that overreaction Monday wild?
I came away on Saturday thinking that if they play 14, 15 games next year, that they might have 5 different receivers along the way who have wide receiver one games. You know what I mean? Like, from week to week, there may be a different guy that's the star in the receiving game, because I think Cook's got it in him. I think all of the guys, like I think Isaiah Bond showed us in one play. It's like, oh, okay, if they can get the ball to him, he can do that. And, there will be games where maybe he has a couple of those and suddenly he's like a 140, 150 yards receiving or something like that, and you haven't even blinked. So I think they got a bunch of guys that have the capability to put up wide receiver one numbers from week to week.
Well, it's just with Bond, and the reason I was asking is because if you look at Bond, they gave Bond. If you look at the target volume in this game, they gave Bond the targets that you would give your number. Like he was the was the Xavier Worthy.
He got 8 targets.
Yeah, and he wasn't even and it wasn't even like he was. Just if you break down the target share between two offenses, he was still like the target.
Hey, and Onward, he caught 3. It was a very Xavier Worthy.
Yeah.
So I mean, if we're talking about how we in the spring game performance about just how we saw the pure target volume kind of shake out, you would think. I mean, you would have to think that Bond is looking like he would be just the pure volume wide receiver one, just by for the function of the offense, right? I just thought that Wingo. I mean, he looks super duper talented. The other thing, and I don't know if just the edge rush, man. It's like as I'm doing it right now. Look, I'm only 3/4 of the way done through the defense, but as I'm doing it clearly in my system, Alfred Collins is going to look like he had the biggest game of all, right? Because he had an interception that he returned for a touchdown. It's like, and he didn't even play much, right? It was so weird. Collins plays like for like 2-3 series. One other series he came back in and they had that was like a one-play series too. So I think he only played like 6-7 snaps in this game, whereas it was weird to see guys like Anthony Hill having to play halfway through the third quarter. But so Collins, it was a complete just it's a one-game sample, and in the deep dig, he got like 6 points for a touchdown, 3 points per interception, all on like 6 snaps. Like, he's going to look like an absolute monster with that kind of thing, right? Throughout the course of the season, that kind of thing would normalize because he didn't do anything besides that one play. Now, that one play was awesome. You get to see these guys who played a little bit more, and the two other most productive players were Colton Vasek and Colin Simmons, at least through the rest of this. And then it was Savea. Savea looks like, we could talk about him more later, but he looks like he's, right as of the team right now, they stand right now, the guys who played, he's the team's best run stuffing option right now. 2 different run stuffs in that game, a couple different tackles, also had a half of a TFL. But then, who was, did you guys notice Tausili Akana at all?
No. I did see him show up once.
Well, he had a sack, right?
I hadn't even thought about you until I just saw you.
He had the sack, and then he was actually in on another. Like, he had 1.5 sacks, and on top of all that, also had 1 solo tackle and one assisted tackle. So it's like these edge Vasek, the depth edge guys, right? Vasek, Simmons, now Akana, who you don't even think of, like. Trey Moore didn't play in this game. I don't know if we find out like why he didn't play, but Trey Moore didn't play in this game. So Colin Simmons was wearing that black jersey as if he was going to play with the 2s, but he played with the 1. He played like 1 series with the 2s. He played the rest of the game with the 1s. And Colin Simmons is in there looking really good, right? But even these depth dudes, Tausili Akana, who thinks about him, right? Colton Vasek, he's been very quiet all spring. Colton Vasek has 2 sacks, 2 TFLs. All of a sudden, man, you're looking at the edge and you're just thinking to yourself, man, they didn't even have the guy that they brought in to be like the one big addition, the one big piece. And we're still talking about the edge rush pressure that they were able to get.
Like, is pretty open about he thinks they're really good at edge. He thinks they're going to be really good. What was the phrasing of that comment from Saturday?
Yeah, I'm looking for it. Catch. I'm trying to find it real quick.
But like he loved
it. He stood on the table for the edge rushers when it was all said and done. I'm just trying to find that quote.
I will say this, this is a team where you can see where there have been some obvious upgrades. They're a little bit better in some positions. They're not quite as good as some other positions, but Sark was pretty vocal after the game on Saturday about, they feel like they can get some defensive tackle additions. He was so outwardly blunt about it to say we need, because he's a guy that's constantly, as the head coach, he has to think about who's hearing his message.
He doesn't care what these guys catch.
He doesn't.
He just doesn't care, man. Like, and I've heard just like, it's like now it's just like it's out there. Dude, people on the team are tilted by how the defensive line plays. They just are. Then they're tilted. They're just kind of tilted by it. It is what it is. Sark knows his team, man. He knows
Sark cares more. Onward. This is what one of my big reactions from kind of thinking about it was. And don't worry, guys. We'll get to the quarterback stuff in a second. I haven't done mine yet. He wants to win a national championship and compete for a national championship this year. He will trade better defensive tackle play this year at the expense of, if he loses a guy, then he loses a guy. But the guy that he loses isn't going to be someone who's ready to contribute at a high level this year. And it feels like that's where his brain is. And so when there's a part of me that's like, what does a guy like Jere Bledsoe and Aaron Bryant think when Sarkisian says, "Now we just don't have enough guys, and like we got to go get some guys"? Because what he's really saying is I got to go get some guys that jump immediately in front of those guys on the depth chart, and he just doesn't care. He'd rather have You know, it's that old, wasn't it Wendy from Popeyes back in the day who was like, you know, for a cheeseburger a day, I'll pay you like twice on Wednesday or whatever.
I'll gladly pay you Tuesday for a hamburger today.
Yeah, and Sark wants his hamburger today, and like he'll worry about 2025 and 2026 when they get there. But it was hard not to think that they had two portal guys in the stands or on the sidelines watching that, and that he was so vocal about it coming out of the spring game on Saturday. It was one of the comments that he makes that I think I will remember for the rest of the offseason.
Yeah, I mean, Sark is not the kind of person, Catch, that, if you're the wife, you want to ask, hey, does this dress make me look fat? Because I think he's going to be that person that probably give you a pretty direct answer, So obviously he doesn't have to worry about that, but he's very direct.
Honey, how do I look today? Fine as shit.
But he doesn't, but he's very, the thing is that he really runs this thing like a pro organization. He's very directed to the point, Catch, and he does not necessarily hold back. He doesn't necessarily try to play a lot of games. If he praises a guy, it's probably because he's deserved it. If he doesn't mention a guy, there's probably a reason for it. And when it took him 15 practices, and like you said, there's guys out there. And that's, like I said, I feel like they're swiping right on everybody who's a defensive tackle in the portal. And I think it's just like, yes, just aimlessly swipe whoever we can get. And he'd like to be known like, hey, man, like we can use some more. We don't got enough. And even though he tried to couch it just a little bit, Catch, by saying, well, we don't need an Outland Trophy guy, but we need some guys. Well, yeah, there's no Outland Trophy guy in the portal, but he does need some guys. And he didn't, again, position he didn't say that about? Offensive line. He didn't say, man, we need to get some more people in here. He didn't say that about
receiver. He didn't say that about any other position. He is putting his interior defensive linemen on blast. Because the thing is, he's like, we don't have enough of them. They had 7 scholarship guys on campus for the spring game. They have. It's not.
Does that include Broughton? Does 7 include Broughton?
Yes. So
okay.
Technically, they had 6, but
because they had to play number 86 and number 42 and stuff like that a little bit with that second group.
You've got Broughton, Collins, Savea, Bledsoe, Bryant, Mitchell, January. They've got numbers. They don't have good players. And I think it'll be fascinating to see what happens from here. I've got instant analysis pieces written for both Norton and the kid from, how do we say his last name? Say it for me. Toia. I think both of those guys will end up Longhorns, but we shall see. As far as hot takes on a Monday go, we somewhat tease it. I need to make sure everybody understands what I'm saying when I say what I'm about to say. Number one, I absolutely believe that Quinn Ewers should be the starting quarterback. Number two, I absolutely believe he will be the starting quarterback. Number three, I don't think there's a real quarterback competition taking place. Number four, Quinn Ewers is a very good quarterback. He's not great, though. In 7 of his last 8 games last year, dating back to September 30th, towards the end of the month, in 7 of his last 8 games, he didn't clear more than 163, 164 as a quarterback rating. Only in the Big 12 championship game did he really hit very good. Otherwise, he was just kind of very good, but not very good. And I look at Arch Manning, and I don't think it's outside the realm of reality to say that dude might be very good. So if he can be very good, and I think that Quinn Ewers currently is very good, I'm just saying that I don't know for sure that Quinn Ewers, I don't know. There's no real evidence yet in games and productivity. Like, he's proven he's a winner, but I think they're both kind of very good. I don't know that Quinn Ewers is absolutely better than Arch Manning. And I still think he should start. I still think he will start. I think he's going to have a big year. But I think Arch Manning's really good. And I think Quinn Ewers is really good. And I think there may be more upside with Manning, but you still got to go through the aches and pains of a guy going through like a young quarterback, and that's not Quinn. But I just think from an optimal level, what we saw on Saturday was what Arch looks like when he gets to play behind the first-team offensive line, and he's got first-team players around him. And, hey, surprise, but when he's throwing to Isaiah Bond or Jonte Cook or any of like the prime guys with blocking ahead of him, he looked really good. I think for most of the spring, he's worked behind that second-team offensive line. When they scrimmage, oftentimes it's against the starters. I don't know that throughout the spring they really got what does it look like when Arch is running the team. But Sark set it up like that on Saturday so that we could get a look, and I thought he was fantastic. And I thought he was even better on the rewatch, because on the rewatch I was looking at the diversity of the throws, the diversity of his targets. He spread the ball around to everybody. And I think, and we'll see if I'm wrong, there's a calmness to Arch in the pocket. And maybe it's easy to say that because he knows he's not going to get hit. But in general, he instinctively has a calmness that allows him to play, I think, a little bit different than Quinn, who can play with a little anxiety in the pocket. It's why his arm angles sometimes get all fucked up. It's why sometimes his feet aren't great. He can get a little anxious back there. And I think Arch might be naturally and instinctively a little calmer back there as a player. And I think it's an interesting conversation. There's no quarterback room in the country better than Texas's, because I watched Michigan look awful at the quarterback position. I don't even know how to talk about Texas and Michigan right now. They're so bad at quarterback, Anwar, that I don't even know who they can be. I don't know what Michigan is. They're going to be hellacious on defense. Connor Wigman was 4 of 15, I think, in the A&M scrimmage. Like, it was not good. And even at Oklahoma, Jackson Arnold was 10 of 20. Like, Texas has the best 1-2 punch in the country, and I don't know that it's even that close. I think almost every school on the Texas schedule would beg. They'd sell a kidney if they could get either of those guys on their team. That Texas has both, plus Trey Owens. Hell, Cole Lord might be the best fourth-team quarterback in the country. He's not terrible. It's a good position to have, to just have an abundance of wealth at the most important position on the field.
Well, I mean, look, I'd say that there was talk. There's been talk in the chat, and you mentioned about this stuff about going versus the ones versus go against the twos. I mean, very well after watching it back. I mean, Arch was mainly going versus the ones, for most of this stuff. And there's Kel in the chat saying, and half the defensive starters sat out. So, well, that's not true. We can go over. I mean, we know Vernon Broughton sat out. I'm not sure that that's a big loss as far as a starter. We know Alfred Collins didn't play much. You still have Anthony Hill playing. I mean, we can go through the list of starters. Anthony Hill still playing at the end of the third quarter. Savea is still playing at the end of the third quarter. Derek Williams plays through the whole game. Makuba still rotating in and out through the whole game, as is Michael Taft. All the corners, Terrence Brooks, Gavin Holmes, Malik Muhammad all played through the whole entire game. Ethan Burke played through the whole entire game. Barron Sorrell played well into the middle of the third quarter. Maurice Blackwell, David Benda still playing there towards the end of the third quarter. And Leongo Lafau and Maurice Blackwell were rotating in for Benda and for Anthony Hill from the very start of the game. They were in on the second series anyway. So outside of Vernon Broughton and Alfred Collins not playing much, the good starters played the whole game. So he was facing the competition of a Texas defense that another quarterback in the SEC is going to face. But without the additions that they'll get in the transfer portal, maybe a couple defensive tackles. And I don't know, man. I'd say after this last game, maybe a corner. I think they probably need a corner. I don't know how you guys feel about that, but after all the kind of warm feelings I had about seeing Terrence Brooks in practice and the fact that he looked really good and stuff.
Boy, he had a day.
But not in the good way.
Not in a good way.
Yeah, man. I think Kobe Black might need to. I don't know if it's an overreaction Monday, man, but Kobe Black throwing out 4 times, only allowed one completion, had the pick. I think sooner than later, you got to start maybe kind of looking his way. But Brooks, it was just, man, it was more the same. It's like, you hope it's different from what we saw in the college football playoff and to some degree in the last few games of the season. And, he looks good in camp and you hear that he's doing well and he's a fixture with the starters and stuff. And then you remember, man, well, there was some stuff with T Brooks that kind of made you shake your head last season. And it's already reared its head again in the spring game. So that'll be something to kind of keep an eye on. I wouldn't be surprised if they look at corners. Would you? If
there's a Jabbar Muhammad that I came away from Saturday thinking, boy, they missed on Jabbar. Like that, they needed that guy. And it wasn't a luxury. Like that guy would have made them a much better team, and not having him, if they could find a guy, yes. I don't know who that is though.
Yeah, well, it's what about the Cormani guy from Colorado?
I don't think he's better than their young guys. And he
seems that could be right. That could be right.
I'm not putting that guy in front of if I'm putting somebody in front of Kobe Black, it's going to have to be somebody that's Jabbar Muhammad good. Otherwise, I'll roll with the young guy.
I think we'll see Kobe Black come along and be a starter in a quicker I think it might not take as long as it took Manny Muhammad.
I think Brooks has a short leash.
He has to. You saw it, man. It's rough, dude, yesterday. And a lot of the stuff that we noticed with the safeties, that wasn't as much. Michael Taft had one hiccup. Derek Williams played really well, right? Jelani McDonald was kind of rotating in with the ones. Him and Makuba. Makuba played well, right? Jelani McDonald, very up and down, right? Very up and down. So big plays and then big gaps and big misses. So I do think that with the safeties, it wasn't like last year where it was just all the bust from those guys, everything you would see from Keaton Crawford and from Jaron Thompson and from the rest of these dudes. It felt like the issues that you saw with the safeties all came from the young guys. Xavier Filsaime had a very, very rough game, right? Jordan Johnson-Rebellet. What? Yeah.
I don't know, the rough game completely. It's
like Anwar always says, man. I got to take tips from my best journal buddy Anwar, and he said that you can't say this guy stinks or that guy stunk. You say that, what is it, Anwar? You say that he struggled. He struggled, right?
Well, what I would say, Alex, about the third team safeties, that they look like third team safeties. Like I came away not thinking Filsaime or Johnson Rebel or any of those guys that were working back there. I was like, okay, like they got the order of the defensive backs correctly for now. It feels like, it feels like the guys on the third team, those guys aren't Kobe Black in terms of like being ready to play right now.
But let me ask you this though, Catch. Honestly, like when we look at the Texas schedule, how many games will these DBs have to be holding on for dear life? When we look at the schedule, you already said the Michigan quarterback situation looked bad, right?
They're just trying to run the ball on Texas.
So we know if you go through the schedule, right, Catch? Colorado State, Michigan, UTSA, Lyman Rowe, Mississippi State. Texas may not face a quarterback who you would consider, let's say, an arch level quarterback.
Yeah.
to Oklahoma.
Well, very good. Very
who
good.
did Jeff Lebby get? Who did Jeff Lebby get? He didn't get Dylan Gabriel. Who did? Do you guys remember? I can look it up because he went to, he's gonna throw, right? I'm forgetting who his quarterback, who he got in the portal.
Well,
I don't know. But and then you have the
they're going to get the Georgia kid early.
Yes.
He's
and then
good.
After that, you got Florida, Arkansas, Kentucky, Texas A&M. I'm just saying, like, there may be only 3 games in there.
Maybe 2.
Where you feel like, okay, and hold on for dear life. I don't know what's going to happen. And outside of that, you might have a secondary that's good enough to get by for most of the season. Just throwing it out there.
Georgia, Texas should have a major quarterback advantage in almost every game. Like, not an advantage, a major advantage. I'm just telling you right now, like, Michigan is quarterback less. I looked at what the Detroit Free Press write-up of that spring game was, and they were like, yeah, on the first 2 drives, the Orgy kid completed a couple of passes, but what was notable about both was that they were thrown behind the receiver, and it was like, Jesus, even on the passes he completed, you guys are telling me they weren't good-looking passes, and they don't really have an option behind Orgy, so there was like nothing. He didn't really play well. He didn't really do anything, but, it's easy to see why he looks like he's going to be the starter, and, quite honestly, as I read spring game reports from Saturday onward about teams on the Texas schedule, we're sitting there talking about one NFL guy might be as good as another NFL guy at Texas. Like, that's what we're talking about, right? Ewers is going to be a highly drafted NFL player. Arch Manning's going to be a first-round draft pick in time. He just is.
Sure.
So that's what Texas is working with. And even like Texas A&M, who have all their hopes and dreams on Connor Weigman, he wasn't good in the spring game. Like, your point about what this secondary ultimately will – but so you know what you're doing? When Texas wasn't very good, Anwar, Texas fans would hold their roster up to Alabama and Georgia and say, and you would say, how many guys do you need to beat TCU? Just beat TCU. Texas is at a point now where maybe you're thinking about, and I think Michigan did this last year, you're thinking about what do we got to do to win in the playoffs? You're not thinking about the regular season. You're thinking about the 3 or 4 games that you're going to play after the scheduled games will truly define your season. But your point about who Texas has to play at the quarterback position, I mean, it's one of the reasons why they should win 10-plus games this year in the regular season, because they're not playing against very many teams on their schedule that have a viable, scary starting quarterback. I'm not saying all these teams have bums, but Texas will have a quarterback advantage no matter who their quarterback is.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Alex.
Well, I was going to say, like, the guy I couldn't think of his name earlier was Blake Shapen from
Baylor, who sucks.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. I'm just coming in to clarify. I was trying to think of it earlier. I wanted to make sure. So he's the Mississippi State guy who I couldn't think of his name.
Yeah, I mean, that's why that's why I'm going to it. Like, at the end of the day, I'm like, yeah, I hear it, and it's like there's some valid points there. And then I'm like, well, who are you facing, right? And then when I look at the quarterbacks that they're going to face, again, I don't know how many quarterbacks on the schedule that they'll face are as good as Arch at this moment. Like, if I had to say, go by, obviously the Georgia guy, you probably would say. I don't know, Oklahoma, he may have some more starts under his belt, but it's all said and done. I haven't really checked to see what the Oklahoma spring game report will look like. I think I'm just going to do like a post at some point tomorrow, just compiling all that stuff. But outside of that, I mean, that's the encouraging part for me is that your Texas backup quarterback probably is better than some of the starters that they'll face this upcoming season. Like the 4 out of their last 4 games, Catch, Florida, Arkansas, Kentucky, Texas A&M, those teams have the worst odds of winning the SEC. All 4 of them have the absolute worst odds. And then if you tell me Michigan is bad, and so now I'm looking at Colorado State, UTSA, La Monroe, really Oklahoma, Georgia, and of course there's always going to be, it's Texas. So there's going to be a nail biter that's somewhere in there that we're not looking at, like Houston was last year. You're saying to yourself, like, how the hell is this a game at this moment? So there'll be something like that comes in there. But overall, it may be good enough to get by with the secondary portion of it. And you may be good enough, to, like I said, to have a really good quarterback room led by Quinn. And Arch should be able to get some significant run if all goes well. So he's ready for next season.
Real quick. So Weigman, A&M may be the 3rd hardest game on the Texas schedule.
I've been saying it for a while. I've been saying, yeah, man. I think that's when the people are just like, oh, it's just the Aggies and stuff, man. It's like they got a good. But I didn't watch the spring game. You're saying he didn't look good in the spring game?
Weigman in the spring game was 5 of 14 for 47 yards.
That's no Arch Manning.
Gosh.
Alex Orji for Michigan was 11 of 17 for 95 yards.
From Texas? One of the Orji brothers?
Yes.
He plays quarterback now?
They're going to be their starting quarterback, Alex.
Gosh. Wow.
Now, here's the interesting thing. Deion Burks, remember him, the wide receiver from Purdue, that Texas was like, no, we're good. They pussyfooted with Deion Burks, but they were waiting on better players. Burks, in the OU spring game, caught 5 passes for 174 yards and 2 touchdowns. So OU fans today are like,
doesn't
Deion.
Surprise me. Yeah.
Deion Burks, for them, they think that's our best player. What's interesting is that Jackson Arnold, so he completed all 5 passes to Burks for 174 and 2 touchdowns. When Jackson Arnold wasn't completing passes to Burks, he was 5 of 15 for 59 yards.
Is Jaleel Farouk still there and stuff? Look. And Nick and what's his last name?
I think everybody's still there except for Stoops.
Damn.
I told y'all that, man, the whole time, man. That who's that other guy, Juice Wells? They were after. I said, yeah, Burks is so much better than this Juice Wells guy.
Texas coaches weren't high on either of those guys. Not enough that they wanted to bring those guys.
I mean, they didn't.
At the expense of, they were waiting for Bond. They thought that Barry and Brown might go into the portal. They were hearing better names might enter the portal, and so they waited and didn't aggressively go after Burks or Wells. They'll have to play Burks, and it sounds like Burks is the straw that stirs the OU drink on offense right now. I mean, they were lavishing him with praise, and it sounds like he warrants it after going, 5 for $174 and a couple of touchdowns. I mean, that'll do.
I'll say.
But those are the big time. I looked it up because those are the games beyond Georgia where you'd say, okay, those are the tougher games on the schedule. Michigan, OU, A&M. That's probably 2, 3, and 4 on the schedule in terms of your toughest games. And all those guys have, Ewer's better than those guys. Arch, I think, is much better than that. It's funny. I asked Chad a couple of weeks ago, Alex, like, would you rather have Connor Weigman or Arch Manning as your quarterback? And he was like, he just laughed it off and was like, of course I'd rather have Arch. And then after watching the spring games, feels like a silly question to ask. But Connor Weigman is a guy that was supposed to be really good. And obviously he gets hurt and the trajectory of what last year was going to be for him changes, but it just seems like these other schools are in spots with their quarterbacks that are less than desirable. You've got Texas sitting over here with a future NFL quarterback in Ewers, and you will have a segment of a fan base that can't wait for whatever opportunity eventually presents itself that allows Manning to hit the field.
And it's just with Wegman, whenever we did that. So if you look at Ewers and you look at Carson Beck,
Carson
right?
Beck.
Carson Beck. So those guys were at the time when I was kind of rounding up the quarterbacks, the SEC co-favorites to win the Heisman this year. I think they're still close. I think that Beck might be a little bit ahead right now I think that might have shifted to where it's like plus 500 for Beck and plus 600 for Ewers or something. But if you look at just the stuff like, and I hate cockamamie PFF, and it was a small sample last year, but 67.8% completion percentage, 979 yards, 8 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. But on PFF, the NFL passer rating of 107.4, the percentage turnover worthy plays only 2.1%. Adjusted completion percentage, so it takes away throwaways and things like that, 78.4%. And the percentage of pressures turned into sacks, whenever you compare that to Quinn Ewers, at 7.3%. With Quinn Ewers last year, that was at 25.2%. So whenever I looked at him last year, I thought to myself, gosh, if you can extrapolate these numbers, over the course of a season, you could have a guy that we could be looking at as one of the better quarterbacks in the whole conference. I mean, it could still be the case. A spring game is a spring game. And as Chad pointed out to me once when we were talking about this, he thought that the competition earlier in the season was a little bit easier than it would have been later through the course of the season for the Aggies. But I've always been of the opinion that Wegman is good. A little bit surprised to hear that it was kind of a rotten egg in the spring game for sure.
Yeah, I mean there's rotten eggs, and then there's like skunks in there with your rotten eggs, and 5 of 14 for 47 yards is that's just bad. Anwar, I'm looking at the clock. We got like 15 minutes left here on the show. What are some other odds and ends from the spring game? Obviously, the whole week we'll be able to have conversations about what came out of the spring game. Were there any other like major talking points for you?
I go back to what I wrote, I guess, for this one. As we'll break down stuff throughout the week, but I'll just go from the overall thing. I think it's the thing that you and I noticed a little bit last year, Catch. We did some shows about it where for years we never heard Sarkisian speak glowingly about his team, and never was disparaging on the previous staff or anything that he inherited, but you just heard him like kind of say, all right, we'll do our best with what we have. And then I think last year we started hearing him saying, I really like this team. I really like this team. He started going on that Texas Exodus tour, and it was like the first time he really started uttering that thing. And then I was like, oh, okay. And then you and I talked about it like, hey, he's never said that before. Like he's never said, I've got the team that I want. And what we saw as a result of that, Catch, was a team that had a lot of success last year. And he came out of the spring game pretty much speaking pretty glowingly about the team that he had. I mean, there's only one area of critique, which was the defensive, interior and getting that better. Everything else, he started talking about how much he likes this team, how much he feels good about this team. Like, I really like this team. And I started thinking to myself, okay, that's kind of what I wrote for Sunday. It's like sound the alarm, because if Sark is back on this again, it might bode extremely well for the upcoming season. I think that's kind of my big thing, is that I look at that. One of my big takeaways is he's saying the same things that he said before last year, and last year ended up being really good.
Well, I think one of the things that really stood out to me about Saturday was that it's such a watchable product. That was, you're not playing Ewers a bunch. There are some guys that you're playing less than others, but I thought from top to bottom, we were looking at a team that's worthy of where it will be ranked going into the season. That it's a really talented team. And what was really interesting to me was that I went back and watched. It's this when the starting defense is on the field. I think one of my hot takes was that the starting defense maybe wasn't as bad as people might have thought that it was. they have the opening 2 drives against Ewers, and they don't let the real starting offense do anything. They totally shut that down. They had a pick 6, and then they get him off the field before they can even cross the 50 on the second drive. So they started pretty well. And, Manning got that secondary a couple of times, but, they did a decent job against – I came away in a rewatch when the first team defense was on the field. I was probably a little more impressed than I was when I was watching the game live, and it just felt like, geez, man, like a 35-34 game is breaking out. What happened to this defense that had been so good in the previous 2 scrimmages? Well, you saw it against Ewers. I mean, Ewers only gets 2 series, but those were Connor Weigman series. Like, that wasn't – I don't even remember what his final numbers were, but, he has the pick that isn't really his fault. Great play by both defensive linemen there. I would tell people today who are like, how worried are you about A, the secondary, and B, the defense as a whole? I thought it was a very vanilla defense. You don't have Trey Moore on the field. They weren't doing any exotics at all. And I think even when I go back and look at the secondary, and Alex, I'm curious your thoughts. We talked about this a little bit, but Malik was good. Derek Williams was pretty good. Makuba looked good back there.
I'm sorry. Yeah, Malik Muhammad.
Brooks didn't have his best day. Gavin Holmes didn't have their best day. There's that second corner that they've got to address. But I thought outside of that, there wasn't a whole lot about the first team defense that I thought negatively about coming out of Saturday. I think it'll end up being okay, but it's defensive tackle and it's that second corner that if you could improve the personnel of this team, I think that's where you would go.
Yeah, I think the two, because if you, so Terrence, if you just look at Terrence Brooks with the coverage burns and stuff like that, it's just, there were just the blow ups, man. You know what I mean? And it's crazy with T Brooks because it's like, it's the same as it was in season. Like last year, he had the best completion percentage or the worst, I guess. He was the best guy as far as opposing completion percentage when he was targeted, right? But he also led the team in burns. So it's like he's hot and cold. He's off and on, and you want to see more consistency out of the guy. And just in a spring game like this, it was tough to see. And I think that some of the other stuff that we saw, we can attribute it to some of these younger safeties, right? So if you're saying that, because here's the thing about Makuba, he was actually good. Makuba was good. Taff had a couple of rough plays. Derek Williams was good. It's kind of these younger safeties that had some issues at times, and some of them were glaring, as you mentioned, Catch. So I think what you're saying is right. I think that's right. I think it's right to say that the second corner, it's not so much the entire secondary that we're talking about, because it's like there's all these pieces, right? There's all these pieces that come in, and sometimes you have a defense that's playing, with, your number two-ish, linebackers, like, I guess technically the number 3-ish linebackers, but like the Kendrick Blackshires and the Darian Galletts of the world. And in front of them, you have, a reasonable looking, defensive line of like Colton Vosick and Zena Yamozolo, and, Aaron Bryan will be in there, and not Save, but like Alex January will be in there and stuff like that. And all this, you feel like you got you got Kobe Black at one corner. You got Wardell Mack or Warren Robertson at another corner. You have Austin Jordan at nickel. And then behind them at the safeties, you have like Yamuzolo's brother, number 41. I forget his name, Zicky. And like number 38, it's like Hunter McMillan or something. You know what I'm saying? Something like that.
Gillespie.
That's what it is. Gillespie. Okay.
That dude played a lot on Saturday. I was
exactly.
like, who the 38?
Right. And so it's like there was some stuff where it's like, well, this stuff on the back end that happened, you can sometimes point to that. And say, well, do those kinds of plays from those kinds of players does a defense make, right? is that how you're, because if you're saying that that's what you're pointing to is the sort of blow ups on the back end, and some of those were,
I'm just saying
it's hard to,
when
put
I go
too much.
back and watch the game, I wasn't as down on like the primary defenders that Texas will be leaning on.
Yeah, man.
Like I didn't watch that game and find myself indicting many guys as weak links. I thought they were actually better than people would have thought if they go back and look at how the first team players actually performed.
I agree, man. I think that Tom did we get to Tom G's super chat? I think Tom G had a super chat.
He did for $5 on War. Our guy Tom G. By the way, Tom G, great seeing you out there Friday at the pitch. Thanks for showing up. That was a lot of fun. What from the spring game leads you to believe our interior D line isn't good enough? I found our run game very disappointing.
I mean, I can tell you my opinion. I think that it was just the fact that it wasn't the interior defensive linemen that were fitting up their gaps and stuffing the run outside of Tia Savea. They weren't. If you look at the run stuffs in the game, the only run stuffs outside of Savea from any kind of player, Colin Simmons had a nice run stuff. Zena Yumozolo had a nice run stuff. Kendrick Blackshire stuff to run. It's none of your interior defensive line guys. And also, you look at just the interior pressure, right, from the offensive line, from the defensive line. None of these, the only one of them that got a sack, a hit, or a pressure was Aaron Bryant. Aaron Bryant got one. I couldn't believe it wasn't considered a sack. I didn't know what to call it because they let I think it was Owens. It was it was Owens who they let get away with it because he got the ball off. But it like Bryant kind of hit him. So I felt they should have whistled it dead for a sack, but I didn't know what to call it. I just called it a quarterback hit. He had a quarterback hit in the pressure. Alex January had a pressure. But other than that, you have guys like Colin Simmons with a hit and with a sack. Tosili Okana with 1.5 sacks. You have Kendrick Blackshire with the pressure. You have these guys like Wardell Mack had a pressure. Warren Roberson, these types of players. Not a lot of organic pressure from the middle that makes me think that they weren't acting in a way that we're used to seeing the defensive tackles act. And look, no one's going to beat T'Vondre Sweat and no one's going to beat Byron Murphy. I get it. And what Tom G's asking about is against the run. But I just think if you watched it back and watched the actual players and you watch their movement off the line of scrimmage and you sort of see how the defensive line operates and you see them making the attempts to keep these offensive linemen off the linebackers and stuff, you'd be disappointed too. I don't think you can, the question of why did the run game seem so anemic? That's a good question. That's a good question. I don't think it was.
Anwar, what did you think about the run game on Saturday? Because it wasn't anything to write home about. I mean, none of the backs. That's one thing we're not doing today is gushing about an individual performance among the running backs. It just wasn't there.
Yeah, it wasn't. I guess I didn't trip on it so much because the passing game looked so good. And I feel like when it comes to those guys, specifically a Jaden Blue, I won't let one practice kind of skew how I feel about Jaden Blue and where he's at. I thought that if this thing was really about highlighting the passing game, really getting Arch some work, really getting Trey, a lot of work. And I think that's where that was. I would like to, I don't have the stats in front of me, but how many pass attempts versus rushes were they? I know Cody put together those stats. I don't have it in front of me, but I'm imagining it's on top of my head. It probably was way more pass attempts than they were rushing attempts. But I feel good about Blue. I mean, Baxter, had a good run. You saw him run over Taft. Felt bad for him on that particular play. It happens. But overall, I guess when it comes to the run game, I don't have too many concerns on it. So that's probably why it doesn't really register for me as far as Saturday is concerned.
Yeah, and Jaden Blue looked really good in all the ancillary, I mean, he clearly caught a big touchdown. Like, Blue's good, man.
So here were the rushing numbers. And so you had Savion Red had 6. He led everybody with 6 carries for 18 yards. And like a lot of that was late. Boy, it was surprising how much they had Red running with like the clear third team or fourth team offense. You know, they weren't mixing in the Gibsons and the Clarks a lot of times with the Cole Lords and even the Trey Owens all the time. It was Blue got a lot of that work, or excuse me, Red. Blue had 2 carries. Kai Woods had 4 for 28. He actually led the team. I thought Kai Woods kind of looked good on Saturday.
That's Onwar's guy.
I love Kai Woods.
Onwar's always ask me buy or sell questions about Kai Woods. I'm like, which one's that? Like number 29? Something.
I found myself like Kai Woods is pretty good. CJ Baxter 4 carries for 5 yards.
Can I ask you Onwar's buy or sell about Kai Woods and see Onwar? What's the buy or sell you asked me? Like would he start?
I asked, like, could Kai Woods start at another, college football program? It was like a buy or sell. Like if he was at another, and I didn't say Georgia or anything like that. I'm just saying if he just transferred somewhere.
Could he start at Wyoming?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Wyoming.
What do you think? Could he?
Yeah.
I kind of maybe. Yeah. I mean, I kind of bought it. I think he could. Certainly like a Mary Hardin Baylor or something. What?
If of the scholarship running backs, Red was the only one that had more than 7 yards rushing. So Red was 6 of 18, Blue was 2 for 7, Baxter was 4 for 5, Jarrett Gibson was 6 for -3.
Wisner had a nice run called back.
He did.
Yeah.
Wisner had 3 carries for 5 yards. It should have been more than that. And then Christian Clark had 2 for none. So I really think Tom G's question was more about our run game look crappy and how could you think the interior defensive line is a problem considering the running game was so terrible. So clearly the interior couldn't have been that bad. Tom, I see what you're putting up and putting down. I should tell you, I don't think the coaches think they've got a run game problem when they get into the red zone. Like when they get inside the 5 or inside the 10, I think they felt like they could run the ball and get the ball into the end zone when they wanted to.
Well, I think, and Tom, I would just tell you this: Sark doesn't think the interior is that good. So, I mean, if that guy who analyzes all the film and he's like, "Hey, if there's a defensive tackle out there, my DMs are open." Like, if that's his response, and obviously, he didn't say that. He didn't go full Dion on this one. I think you should.
Far from it.
It was pretty damn close.
Yeah, and that's the thing too. It's like on top of what Onwar's saying, also, that's you. You don't want to go like you don't want to go there. You don't want to go there. You don't want to do that stuff. It can do things to upset the apple cart with certain players and things like that. It's like not. It isn't just he's thinking it, right? It isn't just that he's thinking it. It's just to the point where he's having to put it out there. It's a flashing red sign as far as the interior defensive line. And now, can you overcome that during the course of a season? Yes, especially with some of the transfer additions that they're hoping to add. But to deny that that's an issue right now would be whistling past the graveyard.
Well, and it's funny because Max says it's just a spring game. I think the thing, Max, to that end, they had 15 practices. And I think that's a theme from the totality of 15 combined workouts. And look, I think they would have loved to have come out of the spring and felt like, you know what, Vernon Broughton looks like a different player. You know what, one of Bledsoe and Bryant, both of those guys can handle 300 snaps this year. Like I think they would love to have been able to come out of here feeling like, you know what, we're going to be all right. We're going to be good. That they don't feel that way, I think, is a real honest evaluation of where they think things stand, that they want to bring in guys. The guys that they're bringing in aren't first or second day NFL draft picks, but they're guys that they think will improve what they have. They're trying to win on slim margins. And I think you got to add up everything from fit. And I think that's one of the reasons why you're not seeing a lot of worries about the run game is that we went through 15 practices where Blue was constantly mentioned, and Trey Wisner was constantly mentioned, and Christian Clark got his love, and Jarrett Gibson got some love, and they had some good days running the football. It wasn't on Saturday, but I think they feel like over the course of the spring, they feel good about where they are there. Hey, one last thing before we wrap it up. We haven't talked about it at all, so nobody can accuse us of making a big deal out of this. We're an hour into the show. Broughton getting married on the spring game. I have no indictment of that, but boy, the optics of that, Anwar, are that you've got a coach who in the post game says that guy's position isn't good enough. His possible replacements were standing on the sidelines, and he wasn't there. And I just, I would imagine that when Sark did his pre-spring meeting, he didn't say, hey, and if any of you guys need to get away on the day of the spring game, like, let us know. We understand personal things happen. Like, that's not what coaches do. And I've been doing this. I've been covering this thing for 30 years. I've never heard of a player like getting a personal absence to go. If it's family related, somebody's sick, somebody died. I mean, that feels different. Best of luck to Vernon Broughton and his new bride. But that was peculiar, right? That a guy missed the spring game for a wedding. I've never seen that before.
For me, Catch, unless the date 420 has some sort of major impact, it means something to that family, like something, grandma did this on 420, my mama did this on 420, and everybody did this on 420, and this is just the thing that has to happen, like that. There's just no wiggle room whatsoever. It is odd. Like, it just is what it is. It doesn't mean like, wish them congratulations, but the time frames. Even if you don't know when the spring game is, you understand that it happens in April. And
I think we've had multiple people semi-confirm that they got engaged in December. So it wasn't like they announced the date and then the spring game was announced and, oh, man, we double booked. I mean, they would have known.
But you know that the spring game is going to happen in April, right? And then so you know that the question, you know that in your mind, you're like, if I schedule for this day, it's probably going to conflict with the spring game. And you're just like, I'll miss it, and it's a thing where it was like, so wait, so none of your teammates are going to this event because all your teammates are at the spring game, and you're basically just saying like, we're going to just take off for the 15 practices. I had someone from an NFL circle ask me on Saturday night. I was like, does this guy even like football? Because
it's peculiar. Like,
it is. That it couldn't wait a couple of more weeks. It makes it very peculiar. Like, unless there's just some sort of tie to 420 that we just don't know about.
Alex, I'll let you have the final word. I just never seen it before. Like, I don't, like Anwar said, there's certain days that in our profession, if Alex, the NFL draft is on Thursday, if Alex was like, hey, the wife and I are, we're going to go celebrate, whatever, I'd be like, Alex, it's a draft. Like, that day you don't take off, right? Like,
I wouldn't be going anywhere. I mean, it's just, but look, man, and look, just you gotta be generous with the guy. I mean, he's getting married, so by all means, I'm always
nothing but happiness.
Yeah, well, but I do have something besides happy. I have questions about it. I mean, I'm happy for him, of course, but it's not nothing but happiness. It's like I feel, dude. I think this is the long and short of it, man. The whole thing with Vernon Broughton and the way that even I heard that some of his teammates sort of might have reacted to it, saying like they think it's, they didn't. I just got the word from some people. They're like, man, I don't. No one knows what's going on with that guy. You know what I mean? So that kind of that kind of response from maybe some of the guys even on the team. Is just sort of a microcosm of the way that the whole interior defensive line thing is right now. Like you kind of feel like you got something. You feel like at the beginning of spring practice, like you got something there that you can at least rely on. And then next thing you know, in the spring game, you can't, and you hear mixed reviews through the rest of practice. And, guys on the team are starting to worry about it and things like that. It's felt real off and on, real spotty. One day it's there, one day it's not. It felt like another instance of that. I mean, it felt emblematic of the way we've kind of had to perceive the interior defensive line through the course of this whole spring football.
Jay Ward says, engaged on Christmas Day 2009, married July 2nd, 2010, small wedding, didn't really need any planning. The amount of money people spend on weddings is insane. Jay Ward, I got engaged on Christmas Day 2008, knowing, look, can't get married in the summer in Texas, although you did, right? July 2nd. Woo! People were sweating Jay Ward at your wedding, I'm guessing. It was hot.
Well, Jay Ward's from Tennessee, but it's still hot on July 2nd in Tennessee, I think. Yeah.
So, and my wife knew that like the whole second half of the year is wiped out because of football. So by getting engaged on Christmas Day 2008, my wife didn't have enough time for a spring 2009 wedding. So we got married and I celebrated my anniversary last week, April 17th, 2010. We had a 17-month engagement because we were like, can't mess with any of the important days.
Better than
Alex, you love it. I was writing about the draft on the beach in Jamaica. Like, can't tell me to stop working. Okay. It's 10:07. It's time to wrap up. Jay Ward, thanks for the comments. I assume that Jay Ward is still. See, Jay Ward, I'm with you. That's what my wife knew.
It's not even that. That's like months and everything. Like we're just talking about like another week or two. Like just May. I mean that I'm not.
April 27th.
Yeah, like May 4th. Like that's all. Like that's wouldn't say like put it off until like next year. So
April 27th, right?
I know if he had a great spring and just didn't play in the spring game, I think it's the circumstances. It's just it looks a bit odd, and I've never seen it before. I guarantee you, if I do another 30 years of these, that will never happen again. What an anomaly. Anyway, look, guys, do us a solid. Hit that thumbs up button. Subscribe to the channel. Go to rogueshop.com and do some shopping today. And if you've done your shopping, make sure you leave a positive Google review. It really helps the business out. It helps the algorithms. It helps with competition with other companies. Make sure you do a solid and leave them a positive
Before you go, Catch, can I just throw this random thing out here by Cotton that I had to get engaged because ATM beat Texas in 2007, lost the bet. You lost the bet and had to get engaged?
Oh, that's why he got divorced 6 months later, I guess.
Did he lose the bet with his future bride?
I need to hear more about this.
Cotton? We want a full written explanation on this.
Oh, dude.
Because it has our attention.
I'm sorry. I know you're about to close out the show, but you said he lost the bet and had to get engaged. Oh my God. I'm just.
Yeah,
I hope Cotton types fast. And hopefully he can give us something in the next 20 seconds before we close out.
I don't think that story can be told in a paragraph.
Probably not.
But I'll even bring Tom on or Cotton on as a guest just to hear the story.
Wow. There it is, Catch.
It was with her.
ATM told what? I told her I would ask.
What was he gonna win? A threesome? What was in play for you, Cotton? Where if Texas had won, she would have what? You never would have gotten engaged? Like what were the terms of the bet? What was on the line for her?
She was like, if ATM wins, you have to propose marriage to me. And he was like, done. Because this ain't going to happen.
And if Texas wins, he never has to propose? A delay of engagement.
Okay.
Well, you should have negotiated your terms better, Cotton.
Yeah.
The other thing is, that was a major upset. So he had to have been thinking he was in good shape. Mac always beats A&M, except when Cotton has engagement bets on the line. Wow.
By the way, that's probably not the best way to get someone to propose to you is like, I know you don't want to do this, but how about let's bet on this game?
If the terms had been like, if A&M wins, we get engaged, but if Texas wins, you get to sleep with my best friend. Okay, that's a bet. Like if the bet is either engagement or delay of engagement, the signs were there, Cotton.
It just is.
They were there. You just weren't looking at them. You were young. We're going to blame it on the sins of youth. Okay, on that note, I got to go. I got a meeting in like 3 minutes. Again, for the guys over at Rogue Shop, tremendous sponsors. Leave them a Google review positively. And we'd love the people at Specs. Thank you very much. For myself, for Anwar, for Alex, they'll be back tomorrow with the old-fashioned. Alex, when are you off like doing draft stuff?
I'll be here for Wednesday morning show, but after that, I'll get my mock. I'll try and get the deep dig up on Tuesday for both offense and defense. Well, I hope I can by Tuesday night for that. My final mock draft will be Wednesday night before I turn it in for the Huddle Report competition. I'm up to number 17 in the world this year. Finally, Catch. I'm ahead of Daniel Jeremiah. So hopefully I'll keep it going this year. I'll get that mock draft up Wednesday. But then,
now's when you retire.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, that's probably right. And then, I won't be here around Thursday or Friday or Saturday or Sunday. So.
Well, look, we got a full week of shows. I'll be back later on, literally in less than 2 hours for House Divided. Fellas, have a great rest of the morning. We'll see you on our other shows throughout the day here on Orange Bloods Live. Smash that thumbs up button. We'll see you later. See you.